Today I will be talking about Neuvillette's opinion on each Archon and why it is the way it is. First of all, who is Neuvillette? Neuvillette is the Chief Justice of Fontaine and the current reincarnation of the Hydro Dragon. Though he has only been in Fontaine for 500 years, it seems the Sovereign's reincarnations retain the memories of their previous lives. So Neuvillette knows that the Archon's powers come from the Sovereigns, and now we also know that the Gnosis were made from the remains of the third descender. It hasn't been revealed in-game who it is yet, but people have theories that it might have been the Dragon King, Nibelung. When the Heavenly Principles first came to Teyvat, he left Teyvat to find a way to defeat the Heavenly Principles. When he came back, despite his best efforts to help the dragons fight the Heavenly Principles, he still died in the process and had his remains turned into the Gnosis, plural. Because he left Teyvat and re-entered Teyvat, that is the supporting evidence for the Descender theory. Him re-entering Teyvat would potentially make him a Descender, which is basically the whole gist of the theory. There are some videos on YouTube explaining this and Reddit posts that explain this better than I could ever, so if you're really interested in the theory, you can check them out when you're done with this video. Neuvillette has a voice line for each Archon and how he feels about them. Mostly not good things, except for one exception. So today I will analyze each voice line, what it entails, and how a confrontation with each Archon would go if it was to happen. Though I do have to say these confrontations probably won't happen for many more centuries as stated in his voice lines, but I still want to kind of guess how each Archon would react based on what we know about them. Number 1. Venti. Venti is someone who can get really serious if situations need him to be. Though he frequently puts on this air of not caring about anything and just wanting to write poetry and drink wine, I'm sure he has a lot of thoughts that he doesn't share with us. Now, if he was to be put on trial, that other, more serious side of him might come out. I don't think Venti is one to fight something like this. He didn't even fight when Senora took the Gnosis from him, even letting her kick him to take her anger out on him. So if Neuvillette was to demand the power of the animal sovereign back, there is a high chance that he wouldn't be too stubborn about it. As long as Mondstadt is fine, which they have been fine without his constant protection since Knights were founded, so they will probably be fine and he'll be fine too without his powers. Though, he might not take it too seriously at first, he will eventually take it seriously and probably make a good arrangement with Neuvillette, though I do wonder who it would go to if he was to relinquish his powers. The Valen is an animal dragon, technically speaking, but I don't think he is the animal sovereign reincarnation, because if he was, why would he be so friendly with Venti? Just like how Neuvillette can remembers that the Archon's powers come from the sovereigns, he would too, and I can't imagine him still being friendly with Venti if he knew that Venti's powers were actually his from the beginning. Maybe he's forgiven them, but I still don't think the Valen is the animal sovereign. Number 2. Zhongli. Zhongli was presumably there at the beginning of the current Teyvat. He tells us he had ruled over Liyue for over 6,000 years, so more than 6,000 years. We don't know what he was before he was an Archon, we just knew he is the oldest Archon. Zhongli is the original Geo-Archon, so no other Geo-Archon has ever existed. He probably participated or at least witnessed the wiping out of the Sovereigns as well. But I do not believe Neuvillette is looking for a fight. Like he states in his voice line, he is open to having a conversation with Zhongli, and considering Zhongli's personality, this confrontation won't turn into a full-blown fight as long as the safety of Liyue is not compromised. He's a much more wise and reasonable person who is open to discussing the problem rather than having a full-on fight. Not that he would win. Even though he is still one of the strongest Archons, he would not win against Neuvillette. You may even see it as a passing on of a contract. His contract with the Geo Authority is over and it is now time to give it back to its rightful owner. He has been preparing for Liyue to rule without him for a long time now, so maybe it is time for him to relinquish his Archon powers completely, if that's what Neuvillette wants from him. But I wonder who would take it. Like Venti's, unless all the Sovereigns just conveniently have reincarnations we have never met, or stayed alive somehow like a Pep, who would take the Geo Authority? Be Ajdaha? He is the king of Bishops, and Bishops are pretty similar to dragons, if not one and the same. And I also feel like if he did win to Ajdaha, that would put Liyue in danger, so Zhongli would not agree to that. I think the bigger problem will not be if Zhongli wants to give up his powers, but rather, would the Adepti be okay with it? Obviously, if he wanted to give up his powers, they're not going to forcibly stop him, but they will still have opinions on whether or not it's the right thing to do. They were okay with him stepping down, but they know he still has his powers. To them, he might as well not have stepped down. But a god giving up their powers is akin to suicide, is it not? I would be very interested to see what the Adepti have to say, especially Sha. The thing about the Archons giving up their powers is, this is a little bit of a tangent, stay with me. The thing about the Archons giving up their powers is, who's to say Who's to say that the sovereigns wouldn't turn on them? Yes, Neuvillette didn't turn on the people of Fontaine, but he has been with them for 500 years, and Fossilors gave him back his powers willingly. It is different from someone like Apep, who's literally preying on Nahida's downfall. Other sovereigns might not be as forgiving or understanding as Neuvillette was, so is it not a safety hazard to give them back their powers? If they got their powers back and decided to turn on the people, no one could stop them. Which is why I feel like Ollie probably wouldn't just give up his powers because Neuvillette asked him to, or because he was put on trial. Have a conversation. They will discuss the safety of his people, which is the most important thing to him, obviously. And if they come to a conclusion that keeps Leroy safe, then he probably would agree to letting go of his powers. With Zhongli and Neuvillette being two of my favorite characters to play, considering I do play them together, and just generally lore-wise, I do hope we get to see them interact in the near future, whether amicably or as enemies. I just know that the cutscenes, for whatever this ends up being, whether story quest, interlude quest, or event quest, is going to be chef kiss. And I cannot wait for them to interact, and I hope they interact, even though it might not happen. Number 3, A. Now, A, unlike Zhongli, isn't as calm or reasonable. If Neuvillette was to show up to Inazuma and demanded the authority of Electra from her, she would not go down without a fight, and as much as I believe A to be one of the strongest Archons with Zhongli, she would not win a fight against a sovereign. Not a chance. She may be able to handle herself for a while, but a full-blown fight, even the power of the people of Inazuma's ambitions couldn't help her. No way she winning that. The authority of Electra would have to be forcibly taken from her. Not like it would be hard, but still, forcibly taken away from her. To be fair, A isn't the original Electro Archon, like how Zhongli is the original Geo Archon. That title belongs to her sister, Makoto. Semantics aside, her encounter with Neuvillette, if it ever happens, will not be a fun one. For her. Mainly for her. It would be fun to watch. And also, Inazuma doesn't have an Electro Dragon representative, and no, Orobashi doesn't count. For some reason, people think he counts as an Inazuma Dragon. He doesn't. He's a snake. They're both lizards, technically, but he's not really a dragon. And like every other Archon, who would take their powers? Like, unlike, Venti and Zhongli, who have some people that could take it. I mean, if whoever's really wanted to make the Valen and H-Daha the sovereigns, they could go ahead. It's a little meh, but, they still have someone we could think for them to give the powers to. But for Inazuma, they don't have anyone. Nahida. Nahida's one is heartwarming and understandable. She didn't participate in the killings of the sovereigns, and not only that, she was neglected by her people. The things she has gone through in the last 500 years, though not as bad as Furina's situation, was still horrible, and Neuvillette has been shown to be a very emotional and empathetic person. He feels things, he's an empath, he has feelings, maybe even too much feelings. This, however, doesn't mean he will not put her on trial. He's understandable but not unfair. She too will be put on trial like every other Archon since her powers are stolen property. But he feels for her situation and commends her for pushing through the bad times and being an amazing ruler nonetheless. If Nahida was to hand over her powers, it would go to Apep, but wouldn't that endanger the people of Sumeru? If Apep ruled over Sumeru, the people of Sumeru would probably be endangered, which is probably why Nahida wouldn't give up her powers as easily. If she cannot confirm that her people will be perfectly safe, she will not give it up. She did not go through 500 years of pain just for her to have to abandon her people by putting them in danger a few hundred years later. Though I don't expect this to turn into a fight like A's one, I do expect Nahida to fight to keep her powers. Or at least come up with an agreement with Apep or Neuvillette that her people will be safe if she was to give up her powers. That her people will be perfectly safe and nothing bad would happen to them, and then she will consider giving up her powers. I doubt any of the Archons would give up their powers if they didn't know their people was safe. No matter how reasonable you are, these Archons have been protecting their people for centuries. Focalors or Furina. Though Focalors and Furina are no longer considered Archons, I still wish to put it here. His opinion on Furina has obviously changed from when he first introduced us to her. Instead of a childish, aloof that he saw her as, now he cherishes her and the sacrifices she has made, and wishes to support her and her endeavors, even going as far as to pay for her necessities so she can have a somewhat peaceful life after all she's gone through in the hands of saving the people of Fontaine. I enjoyed that he loves her performances and wishes to see her get back on stage, even going as far as to say he will be supporting her in the audience. I don't think Neuvillette ever wanted to hurt her, but circumstances pushed him to do what he did, and that has helped their relationship develop, and I do hope to see them interact even more, even though they no longer work together. In conclusion, other than Furina, every other Archon will be judged on trial for their possessions of the stolen sovereign powers, and I think we'll see more of his voice lines on other Archons as they come out, like Murata and Desaritsa as they come out. If it's ever turned into a story quest, I would be very excited to play through it. I want to see the Archons have their authority challenged by someone higher than them that isn't Celestia or the Heavenly Principles. Will they be willing to let go of their powers, or will they fight tooth and nail for their technically stolen positions? What do you think? Leave a comment below. This was very fun to record, and I'm so happy that Neuvillette exists as a character. He's one of my favorite Fontaine characters. One last thing. If Neuvillette does put the Archons on trial, couldn't they just, like, I don't know, fight one of the duelists, like Chlorinde? They could, instead of standing on trial, they could just ask to have a duel with someone, and they just wouldn't have to stand on trial. It's a loophole, it's a cheap trick, but like, it's part of the law. Neuvillette isn't gonna like go against the law, right? He understands the law. And I'm sure if Hoyoverse ever decides to go the route of actually having the Archon stand on trial, the duel thing will be talked about, or at least mentioned, as to why they didn't go that route. So I'm sure they'll figure it out. That is all for today. Subscribe, see you whenever. Thanks for watching.